So something I've been finding pretty interesting lately regarding the popularity of Dragon Ball Super compared to One Piece. And the reason why I'm saying compared to One Piece is because we all know One Piece in Japan is pretty much like the end all be all as far as mangas go. It is the most selling manga of all time in general. Like, it sold over 300 million copies. One Piece is the shabanga bang, and as far as anime goes, it's pretty much up there as well. I mean, there's a few other anime like children's cartoons that are higher than it in ratings, and I think like Detective Conan Case Closed is probably a little higher than it as well. But for the most part, One Piece is one of the all-time most popular anime, and every week it does amazing. Now, incoming Dragon Ball Super, we've seen 2 cases already. 2, which is probably more, but from me noticing, I've seen 2 cases where Dragon Ball Super has been so close to either catching up to One Piece or surpassing One Piece in ratings as far as the anime goes, and I find that insane. Now, I'm sure there's going to be the naysayers. There's going to be the people that say, well, it's just because it's Dragon Ball. Of course, it's going to have an edge, but at the end of the day, One Piece is shitting on it. Now, the Dragon Ball name definitely helps. Without a shadow of a doubt, it does help. At the end of the day, it's, a big household name. Dragon Ball, people grew up with it, especially in Japan. A lot of the people that saw it back in the day, they're adults. They're probably tuning in as well, but there's a little bit more to it than that. And the reason I'm saying that is because when Dragon Ball Kai came out back in the day, 2010 or 2009, whenever it was airing and stuff like that, it got canceled, and it never was reaching the levels that Dragon Ball Super is right now. I remember looking at the ratings for Kai back in the day, and it was doing like 5s and stuff like that, 4.0s or whatever. It wasn't really doing too high, and at a certain point, they were like, well, we brought it back, we're investing all this money in remastering, which it really wasn't a lot of money, Toei, let's be honest. You guys could have done so much better, but you took the easy way out. Let's keep it real, Toei. But they felt as though they were investing a shit ton of money, and they weren't getting enough of a payback because Dragon Ball wasn't really exploding like they wanted it to. So ultimately, before we got Boo stuff, it got canceled with Cell, and then it was a few years later where they realized the replacement for Dragon Ball in the time slot, Toriko, wasn't really popping, that they said, alright, we invested a shit ton of money in Toriko, we had crossovers with One Piece, crossovers with Dragon Ball, it's not going nowhere, let's try bringing Dragon Ball back, and they brought it back for the Boo saga, and it still was doing alright, wasn't really, the biggest thing ever. It did a little bit better, I believe, than what Toriko was doing and what Kai had previously done, but it still wasn't a big deal. Incoming Dragon Ball Super, first few arcs ain't gonna really do that big because the first few arcs were based on movies that everybody went out and seen. The Beerus movie, Battle of Gods, Resurrection F, Frieza. Nobody was really that hype. Slowly start creeping in with the Universe 6. That's when I started noticing, the ratings are getting up there. And then the Goku Black Future Trunks Returns arc, that's where I truly feel as though this is what's helping Dragon Ball, and it's the content itself, it's the excitement, it's the hype, it's everything that's going on right now is what's pushing Dragon Ball Super to getting up there close, neck and neck with One Piece. I've seen a couple different instances already where Dragon Ball Super will be at like a 6.4 and One Piece is at a 6.8. That is neck and neck. I've seen Dragon Ball Super just recently, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was about 0.8 behind, 0.9 behind of One Piece, which is absolutely insane because we're in a different time right now. Let's be clear here. We're not in the late 90s, we're not in the mid 90s, we're not in the early 90s as far as Japan goes, where Dragon Ball reigns supreme. At the end of the day, the reality is that One Piece in Japan, at the very least, not saying worldwide, in Japan, One Piece reigns supreme. That is truly the most popular shonen at this point. So the fact that Dragon Ball Super going up against a monster like One Piece, selling, millions of copies, the anime is just ridiculous. From what I hear, everybody that I've heard that visited Japan, they see One Piece everywhere. They're on a train, they see One Piece promos all over the train. They're in a toilet, they see Chopper on the handle and shit like that. One Piece is ridiculously popular over there. So for Dragon Ball Super to come and start kicking ass and getting neck and neck in the ratings with One Piece, and I think one of the episodes was like the start of a brand new arc, so everybody's gonna be excited to see how it's gonna start off and stuff like that. So for Dragon Ball Super to be coming neck and neck with One Piece, that is insane, and that truly is a testament to how exciting the Goku Black stuff has been. I mean, the material itself has just been insane, and everybody's getting, really excited about it, and it shows, and that's the great thing about it. Like, you cannot argue and say it's only the Dragon Ball name that is helping to surpass One Piece, or at least catch up to One Piece, because there's more to it. If that was the case, Dragon Ball Kai would have kicked One Piece ass back in the day when it came back with the remaster and stuff like that. If that was the case, Dragon Ball would have already surpassed One Piece again, but Dragon Ball Super, baby. The content speaks for itself. I want to know what you guys think about this, though. Do you think it's the content that is making Super surpass One Piece or catch up to One Piece in the ratings? How do you feel about that? Do you think it's maybe just that One Piece hasn't been as exciting? Because there's an argument there as well. Maybe some people feel as though One Piece is losing its edge. Maybe they feel as though One Piece isn't what it was. Because honestly speaking, if we was to compare the hype that One Piece had when the anime was running through Marineford with Whitebeard and Ace and stuff like that, I think that Super probably wouldn't have been able to touch it. I think if Super came out that time and we had, Goku Black and stuff like that, I don't even think at that point there would have been any contest. So there's a question there. Do you think there's a possibility One Piece is losing its edge in popularity and that's why Super's able to catch up as well? I mean, don't get it twisted. One Piece is still a monster. The manga sales speak for itself. I think it sells almost every volume 2 million first week of sales, and they sell like 3 or 4 million total per volume, and again, over 300 million sold. So it's no joke, but there's in and of itself a discussion right there as far as what's going on, why Dragon Ball Super is catching up to One Piece in the ratings. And I guess one of the final arguments could be as well, has Dragon Ball Super reached its climax already? Is there a possibility with whatever we get next can ultimately be detrimental to Dragon Ball Super's success? Because again, right now, people could argue this arc is a fluke. The Dragon Ball Super Goku Black Future Trunks Returns arc is simply off hype that, hey, one of the all-time fan favorite characters, Trunks, because even back in the Toonami days, if you go back to the Toonami days and you really look at it, there were people that were posting up fan art of Trunks before he even came to the anime back in the States and stuff like that. Like, he wasn't even out. That's how high the popularity is. So let's just say we go to the next arc. There's a possibility that the next arc won't carry the same weight that this arc has had. Like, one of the little plays that they try to use to get Dragon Ball Super or Dragon Ball in general a little bit up there was with Resurrection F. One of their big, I guess gimmicks was, hey, Frieza's back. One of the all-time favorite villains of everybody that loved Dragon Ball. People love Frieza, so they used that, and ultimately Resurrection F absolutely bodied Battle of Gods. I know it did it over here as far as sales go. It did a lot of numbers because they have Frieza back. So there's the possibility as well that the reason why Super is doing so well right now, why it's catching up to One Piece, is the fact that we have a fan favorite Trunks. Because you come to this arc right now, and again, you have Future Trunks, and then also Goku Black, I think, is a big play. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Goku Black. I love the Goku Black Zamas, all the mystique about it, the whole, mystery of who he was and how did he look like Goku and stuff like that. That was insane, but that was another key, I guess, play you could say, or you could argue it's a gimmick or whatever, as to what got this arc so huge to begin with, because everybody's like, whoa, an evil Goku, who could it be? And I think mysteries, even though essentially people aren't really big fans of mystery series like that, aside from like Case Closed, mystery series never really get up there, but I think people like a certain amount of mystery in any story that they're seeing, because they want to kind of guess themselves, like, what could it possibly be? So there's a possibility as well. The reason why Super is as big as it is right now and, catching up to One Piece is because of this Goku Black Future Trunks Returns arc. And when this arc ends, who knows, maybe Super could drop back down in popularity. Maybe it won't be as hype, because right now everybody's loving it. Everybody's just going crazy about Future Trunks' return. But say next arc we go into the tournament, because we're supposedly going to be having a big tournament. Maybe people won't like the new villains. Maybe people won't like the new antagonists. Maybe people won't like the next transformation that Goku goes through, and that could again be detrimental to the popularity of Dragon Ball Super and it overall surpassing One Piece in popularity. But again, I'm really curious what you guys think about this whole discussion. I know I've been talking for a while, I've been rambling, but it just really intrigues me to see that Dragon Ball, which I love Dragon Ball, and I love One Piece too, don't get it twisted. Like, I've been talking about One Piece on YouTube for years. I love the shit out of it, but I really find it interesting to see that an oldie is coming back with some really good stuff to the point that it's catching up to One Piece. And I want to know you guys' opinions, you guys' take on all this. Do you believe that the reason why Dragon Ball Super right now is catching up is because of this arc? Could it be because One Piece has been slowing down in popularity? Maybe people are getting tired of it. Could it just be a fluke? Could it just be the fact that Dragon Ball Super right now is hot, but next arc it could totally fall and crumble, and if it's not as good as this arc, then people will lose interest? And your overall thoughts of this? Honestly, it's like a battle of titans, and at the same time they're both friends, because we've seen little crossover promos between One Piece and Dragon Ball and stuff like that. So it's all in good fun. Nobody needs to go nuts with each other, because I'm sure in the comment section is going to be people, fuck Dragon Ball, One Piece for life, I love Luffy's gum shit. And of course there's going to be the people, Dragon Ball is GOAT, fuck One Piece, Dragon Ball is the OG. So there's going to be some of that. I hope you guys keep it at a minimal, because again, it's all in good fun. And Eiichiro Oda, in case you guys don't know, looked up to Toriyama for many years throughout his entire career. So yeah, just keep it at a minimal. But that's all I have for this one. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you liked anything I had to say or enjoyed the video, drop me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you want more from me, make sure to subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and stalk my Facebook to get more when the video ends. I'm ForneverWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day. And keep on rocking on for that Dragon Ball and that One Piece greatness, people.